The Brachiosaurus plays an important part in 3 of the 4 Power Rangers dinosaur-based teams, and as we've already covered, if Thundersaurus is analogous to the original Dino Megazord, if Dino Stegazord is Dragon Zord, then that surely means that Brachio is Titanus, right? Well, sort of. Let's talk about the Dino Thunder Brachiozord, starting with the toy history. So this is an interesting one because this is another only sold as Super Sentai release. Brachio was never released by Bandai America in any way, and let's be real, barely released by Bandai Japan either. Though in 2003, all additional Zords were badged up as the numbered Bakuryu Action Series. The second one in that series was the Dimetro Zord, which we just had in the Dino Stegazord box, and then number 3 was their Brachiosaurus. As a toy though, it was much more compact than the gargantuan version shown on screen. There was apparently a limited papercraft prize one that was large enough, though jury's out on the stability of it, to store the DX Mecha releases within. Though with only 596, odd number, awarded, and being made of cardboard over 20 years ago, your chances of finding one of these that still works are undoubtedly slim. In theory though, that thing should have been big enough to house multiple Zords at a time, which is crazy when you see how big these things are. Even our original 90s Titanus can't hold too many of them. So yeah, you try and imagine how massive it would have been to realise this in the DX scale. Onto the design, it's a much more regal Brachiosaurus than our original 92-93 toy. White becomes black and black becomes grey, but gold is the most prominent colour here, apart from the big grey carrier part, bit like a storage box on the roof of a car. The crazy thing is, while this scales fairly evenly with the other Dinozords in the toy line, we know from the series scale that it is dramatically, comically undersized, the scale that it should be. They were very aware of this and included miniature versions of the Dinozords in order to still mimic the Brachio's deployment feature, which was featured extensively on both show iterations. This is actually realised very similarly to the Zenith carrierzord from Lost Galaxy, which was also criminally underscaled and contained 10 miniatures of the Stratoforce and Centaurus Zords that should be able to store at a show scale. The differences there was that the Zenith could still transform, and for most people it still looked fine in the overall deluxe Zord line, even though it shouldn't have. Here, the Brachio's lack of transformation makes it an even more difficult to justify item. The differences to the original then, so how do you want to compare this? Because against a brand new in-box version, I'm missing a few pieces, like the T-Rex's legs. I'm also missing the front compartment door and all of the missiles, which stow inside the 2 side doors. The seller offering this a few years back unfortunately didn't include them, and at the time I was a lot more focused on being able to represent all translucent dinosaurs for some reason. Now though, the front door thing really bugs me. Compared to the only figure transforming version made available for Dino Thunder though, this is still much bigger. I guess a big difference to what we would expect from the correct scale version is that the neck can be detached from the body and combined with either of your Megazords. It looks kind of bizarre on Dino Stegazord. It looks much better on the Thundersaurus, though it's a head trip when you know that in series lore, that Megazord should be small enough to surf down this thing's neck, and here it's been reassigned as a glorified arm. It's also a shame that there's no other action feature in the head when you activate the battery power. I would have loved some sort of like mouth chomping action. What's bad about it then? Well, it hurts me to say this, especially for something that became a Tommy Zord, but it's kind of pointless. It's sort of the cause of its own problem. As an idea, it was interesting. A carrierzord that can hold 8 separate Dinozords. We'd obviously had similar with the Zenith, but not exactly this before. The problem is, unlike Zenith, it didn't have anything to do. It doesn't transform, it doesn't combine. Fair enough, the Volcasaurus Megazord surfs down its neck a couple times. They may have crafted a black Brachiosaurus, but what they'd really created was a white elephant. Basically a burdensome asset where the cost of a full-size version would not be at all in line with its usefulness as a toy. so they couldn't make a full-size one because its lack of function and being cost prohibitive meant it just wasn't to work. Fair enough, the Mammoth from Ninja Storm, no wonder they called it the Mammoth in hindsight, didn't have a transformation either, but at least it led to a combination and the final one of the season, and that sort of housed or gave a frame for everything that we'd had to that point. Of course, that got cut from America. The DX Brachio was finally an idea too great for even Japan's toy market. The rubbery plastic mini dinosaurs are a bit of a shame, to be honest. Remember back to Lost Galaxy, where its equivalent toy line of Gingaman, the Zenith Carrierzord, had miniatures like this, but they were painted and therefore looked less like something you'd find in a kid's loot bag. I suppose you could, as ever, paint the details in, and those precious miniatures were basically only a few colours and therefore easier to detail than these, but still, you miss it. You miss out on the detail here. This does continue the trend of the toy line of the dinosaurs being able to open their mouths, but it's to a bit of a fault this time, as the missile holder launcher is very prominent. What's good about it then? Well, at least it exists. I think your Dino Thunder collection looks much fuller with this as a part of it. It doesn't sit right that there's a smaller than usual 5 Ranger team, where one of the 5 doesn't even get his proper Zord in the toy line. And for us, the fact that it was Tommy at that, so if you want to get all of Tommy's Power Rangers Zords together, you go for it. You could even green screen, play around with it, and make the Brachio deploy them. That's probably as close as we'll ever get with this one, unless there's a radical 3D printer out there who fancies a go. So, while Brachio may have been the original plan for a big Ultrazord carrier toy, the backup plan of Mezzodon Megazord became the true final combo of the season for Dino Thunder. Trying to engineer a carrier Zord for Dinozords was a fun idea that we hadn't really had before, at least not separately. The problem was that the market obviously couldn't support something of that scale, especially something which couldn't reduce its room-filling footprint by, standing up into a humanoid. I think they kind of learned their lesson on this in time for next season, but it'll always be a shame for Dino Thunder that Brachio, 1, got ditched from America and only partially adapted for Japan, and 2, it wasn't a very interesting Zord to begin with. I always think 3 makes for a better display than just 2, so in that respect, there's enough here to enjoy. The Mezzodon is just one of several other Megazords that appeared for this season, a bit like the repaints that would follow the next Dino season in 2015 and 16. There were more releases than you really needed, and many were done in the cheap way, because why not? And yeah, this is it for what I've currently got from Dino Thunder right now. I haven't managed to convince myself to pay the rather high item price for the Mezzodon Megazord, at least a version that comes with all the pieces, but if enough of you think I should carry on, let me know, and I'll hopefully be able to come back to this season at some stage. Meanwhile, do check out my Patreon. The latest update on the build of Megazord is now over on there. And yeah, Dino Thunder. What a season. That's design-wise so pioneering for its time. They're still doing things very similar to it by the time we hit the next Dino season that follows on. Those Plex and Toei designers were really starting the millennium off with a bang, weren't they? So do let me know your thoughts on Brachio, and especially whether you ever would have bought a full-size one. Would you even do it now if someone managed to make it possible? Do let me know. Until the next time, I'll see you later.